Horse Transportation Safety Act of 2009. I ask unanimous consent to discharge the Subcommittee on Highways and Transit. Call up the bill, H.R. 305, that the bill be considered as read and open to amendment at any point. Now, in the absence of Chairman DeFazio, I recognize the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Cohen, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I request unanimous consent first to submit into the record several photos and a letter addressed to you from the Animal Welfare Institute. Without objection.
Without, the gentleman asked for consideration and for inclusion in the record. Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. H.R. 305 prohibits the interstate transportation in the United States of horses and 2 or more trailers stacked on top of one another. Double stacked trailers are designed for the transportation of livestock, such as cattle and hogs. Since horses are much larger and taller than cattle, stacked trailers do not provide enough headroom for horses to stand upright. The American Veterinary Medical Association recommends a trailer height of at least 7 to 8 feet as safe for horse transport. This makes it impossible, the way our highways are constructed, to have double-decker transports for horses that comply with their needs and with the availability and possibility of transportation in our highway system. Most horse owners have a strong interest in protecting their animals and provide transportation that takes into account the comfort and safety of their horses. However, in some cases, the welfare of the animals may not be a primary consideration, such as transportation to feedlots and to slaughter and for certain assorted other reasons. In the 1996 Farm Bill, the Congress mandated the U.S. Department of Agriculture issue regulations to address the commercial transportation of horses bound for slaughter. The USDA issued rules in 2001, effective in December 2006, to prohibit the use of double-stacked trailers to carry horses to slaughter, finding that horses cannot be safely and humanely transported in double-stacked trailers. These rules only apply to a segment of transportation directly dealing with the slaughter facility. This means horses could be transported a long distance across the United States to feedlots or other interpoints in double-stacked trailers before being transferred to single trailers for final transportation to slaughter, thus effectively getting around the law. There's also no prohibition against double-stacked trailers to transport horses for any other reason other than bound for slaughter. The fact is, horses shouldn't be in double-deck trailers. That's not natural with their size and their normal attitude towards lifting their heads and having their heads for balance and putting their heads up, which can be damaging to them. Remember horses. This is Trigger and this is Champion. All of us remember Trigger and Champion. You'll need to be with us on this one. Recent highway accidents in Texas and Illinois have raised questions about the safety in transporting horses in double-stacked trailers. The American Veterinary Medical Association has found that double-stacked trailers increase the rate of injuries to horses in an accident. Crashes involving double-stacked trailers can also cause significant debris and destruction, close roads, and result in high cleanup costs. Beyond that, the fact is it's simply inhumane to transport these beautiful creatures that we love and use for pleasure and recreation. H.R. 305 prohibits any interstate transportation of horses and double-stacked trailers, regardless of the destination or the segment of the transportation chain if the horses are bound for eventual slaughter. The bill has a civil penalty in it of at least $100, if not more than $500 for each violation. H.R. 305 has 69 co-sponsors. It's supported by the American Veterinary Medical Association, the Animal Welfare Institute, the Humane Society of the United States, and horse lovers all over the world in the United States. I'm proud to be the Democratic leader of H.R. 305 and urge my colleagues to support reporting this bill favorably for the full House.
I thank the gentleman for that explanation. I also want to express appreciation and acknowledgement of Mr. Kirk of Illinois for initiating this legislation. As I looked into this matter, I was astonished. In 2006, a double-stacked trailer hauling 41 horses to slaughter in DeKalb, Illinois, crashed, killed 16 horses. In 2007, October, double-decker trailer, 59 draft horses near Wadsworth, Illinois, crashed, 15 horses died. In May of this year, trailer hauling horses to a feedlot in Texas crashed in Oklahoma. 11 of 30 horses died. In 2006, the Department of Agriculture determined that using double-stacked trailers is inhumane to transport horses to slaughter, prohibited their use for that purpose. Well, if it's inhumane to haul them to slaughter, it ought to be inhumane to haul them for any other purpose as well. And the Department of Agriculture in 2006 took appropriate action. This bill goes further and does, I think, the right thing. Mr. Jaswala.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to yield to Mr. Labiana.
Gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you very much for moving this bill forward and taking the time to understand some of the real reasons why we need this. I'm a very proud co-sponsor of the bill. The bill fixes a loophole in current law that allows horses to be transported in severely humane conditions. I want to applaud Representatives Kirk and Cohen for their leadership, and I urge all members to support this bill. And finally, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask unanimous consent to include in the record letters of support for the legislation from several organizations dedicated to improving the health and welfare of horses and other animals. And I yield back.
Without objection, those letters will be included in the record. Do other members wish to be heard on the bill? Mr. Boswell.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment.
The gentleman is recognized.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate the discussion. I think that I'm probably as humane with horses as anybody in this room. I appreciate the name Trigger, Champion. On my farm, we've got Scooby-Doo and Lilybell. And they're very well fed, respected, and cared for, and always will be. The reason for this amendment is not to take away from anything, but it's to maybe refine a little bit. And refine the sense that, yes, it's been said that double-decker trailers are designed for cattle, hogs, and so on. Some, that's true. However, some are also designed for transport horses. And one I'm concerned about, I want to share with you a little bit about, is out in our part of the country, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, in fact, across the country. Small towns, bigger towns, average-sized towns, we have a lot of rodeo. It's a big entertainment business. It's a lot of jobs, and there's big rodeo companies provide the livestock, and then there's small ones. And I'm thinking of some that I know in my part of the country, pretty small, but very dedicated, very reliable, and they do a good job. Their trailer is designed to take these questions into account. I don't know how many of you know what a potbelly trailer is. I would guess for sure the chairman does, and some of the rest of you. But it's a trailer designed where you've got extra depth between the tractor, if you will, wheels or the driver axles and the trailer. And it adds another probably 3 feet, I don't know. And then the front portion and the back portion of those trailers have got the height of any other trailer. That part has got the height, and there is a smaller deck sometimes above, and they put their other livestock on that portion, the rodeo company, to move the cattle and the sheep or whatever they want to move along. They do not put horses there. They're very careful to, when they start moving, that if there is a tall horse, as it happens to be, now most of them aren't, they're quarter horses, and there's a lot of difference between a quarter horse and a thoroughbred. I would trust that you all know that. And if there's a tall horse, then they go up to the front portion or back at the back portion where there's plenty of headroom, and that is considered. So what I want to do with this amendment basically is to take this into account, not do harm to this industry and entertainment thing that we across the country have enjoyed for years and years, and realize that they do transport their horses different. When they travel from any distance, I don't know of any that will stop after 4 hours and rest their horses and let them have a little exercise.
They're not recording this, are you?
Most of all in those cases, they're even less than 4 hours, but if they aren't, they do that. You drive across, like Kansas, if you have, down Turnpike or 35, if you will, you'll see there's pullouts every now and then where they have a pen that they can rest their livestock. And so that's practiced. So this amendment would actually say to the Secretary of Transportation, work with the Secretary of Agriculture and make a decision on this. Now, they might make the decision to ban all double-decker. That'll be their choice. But I would trust they would use good sense and realize that these spatial arrangements are made, that they would allow for it and make a rule that would watch it very, very closely. The same way with the fine. My amendment would change that, but it would again charge the secretaries to work this out and take appropriate action, which they could be overruled. So I'll offer this up and look forward to any discussion we want to have, but I think this does not take away from the base of what you're trying to do. I think it refines, it explains, and allows for us to keep something going that's very important to our communities across the country, and recognizing that they do take spatial action to be sure that these items that you're concerned about are taken care of. Those accidents, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned, we've done a little search into that, and there's additional information. Driver going to sleep, a driver running through a red light, and things of this nature that adds to it. But I actually, and I don't want sympathy on this at all, but I don't suppose there's too many of us in the room that ever drove a double-deck trailer. A few of us have, and but I want to concentrate on the fact that the rodeos, the rodeo companies make a special effort to do this right. With that, I would yield to any questions or discussion.
The gentleman will be recognized for his amendment in due course. The gentleman's time has expired. Other members, Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With all due respect to my friend, Mr. Boswell, I speak in opposition to the amendment. There may be some horse shipping companies that stop every 4 hours. However, the ones that I know of go round the clock, long runs with drivers switching out, sleeping in the bed over the cab. I also happen to have known some horses who are well over 17 hands when they're 3 years old and still growing. And I think of the items, as Mr. Boswell said, that we're considering here. Some of these items are well known, some not so well known. When 8 bells broke down on the track and on TV in front of millions of people, when Barbaro broke down on the track in front of millions of people, there were cheers and shock around this country and outside this country from those witnessing. When a horse who has been bred for our entertainment, for our betting, pleasure, or profit, for work to perform jobs that require a horse's strength, and these sensitive creatures are no longer considered valuable enough to keep alive, and they're on their way to a feedlot or to slaughter. I think it's only fair to them and the humane thing to do to make sure that they're treated with the humane situations that we would like to see if we were watching ourselves. It's the same way we watch those unfortunate events on the track. And I would err on the side and prefer that we err on the side of compassion and humanity and humane treatment of these intelligent, gifted animals who have senses that we don't know about, and memories and feelings. And with that, I yield back.
Do other members wish to be heard? Mr. Cohen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With all due respect to my colleague from Iowa, who I greatly admire and appreciate, I have to oppose his amendment, for it cuts the guts out of the bill. I was thinking about the potbelly trailer. This would be kind of a gutting or potbelling of this bill, and it would present a conflict between the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Transportation, an irreconcilable difference that, like in divorce, you get it one way or the other, and I would ask us to defeat the amendment and pass the bill.
Well, the gentleman hasn't offered the amendment yet. I recognize for that purpose.
Ahead of myself.
If no other members wish to be recognized, the bill is now open for amendment. Are there amendments to the bill? Mr. Boswell.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I apologize. I misunderstood. I thought we were at that point, so I hope you should accept my apology when I talk about my amendment.
Well, you may have a shorter second opportunity to address your amendment.
I think that would be appropriate.
2 minutes.
Excuse me.
Give you 2 minutes.
2 minutes. All right. Well, I'll be very quick. We give the authority to the Secretary of Transportation and the Secretary of Agriculture to recognize there's a spatial need in the rodeo industry. They do have spatial trailers. They do have headroom. I want to come by, I can show you some pictures of it. I can refer you to a website. We can show you this. And so I'm very appreciative of the concerns that the sponsors have and what they want to do. I don't think I'm challenging that at all. I'm trying to respect an area where there's been response. They're doing the right thing by designing the trailers to accommodate. And the expense of congestion on the roads, they give you examples where, a properly designed trailer would move the livestock to the destination where it would take 5 or 6 times the gooseneck trailers or whatever do that and so on. It just doesn't make a lot of sense if they in fact do design and make the adequate considerations for the horses, which I certainly wouldn't want it any other way, and have a long history of that. So with that, I would invite any discussion about the amendment, but I would encourage you to make this consideration, have faith in our Secretary of Transportation and the Secretary of Agriculture work together, because I don't think for a minute that either of those departments would want to use the horses any more than any of us would, but they would realize that a special consideration could be given and still protect the horses as we all feel about them, and allow the rodeo industry to continue to function and do it in a way that would make it viable and so on. With that, I would yield any questions and encourage your support.
The gentleman's time has expired. I too heard from the rodeo sector. I didn't know it doesn't surprise me in every organization, or that an organization exists or an association exists for every interest in this country. So there are the rodeo folk, and they have represented that there are members of their organization who use modified double-decker trailers. They claim one level has a higher clearance for horses and one a lower clearance for cattle or bulls. So I asked staff to do further inquiry. It's not clear that they meet the recommended height of 7 feet as determined by the American Veterinary Medical Association. The Rodeo Association has not provided the committee with data we asked on how on the number of these modified trailers, how many are in use, where they are in use, nor have they submitted any information on adverse economic impact of this legislation on rodeos. So I would, if the gentleman wishes to pursue this matter to amendment, I'd be constrained to oppose it. But I'd urge him to withdraw the amendment, and let's see if the industry has something further, more substantial, more data-based to offer us. Do other members wish to be heard on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Lobiak.
Well, I don't think Mr. Boswell responded to your request for withdrawal. If he has, I will withhold my
I was just giving him time to think it over.
Well, since he has not withdrawn, I would like to speak in strong opposition to Mr. Boswell's amendment that would direct the Secretary of Transportation in consultation with the Secretary of Agriculture to conduct the rulemaking to establish these requirements for this interstate transportation of horses. The amendment creates a conflicting authority between the USDA and the DOT, since the USDA has already ruled that double-decker transport trailers of horses is inhumane. So I don't know why we're asking the Secretary of Agriculture to rule on something that the USDA has already ruled on. And I urge members in the strongest possible terms to oppose this amendment, because if you were to support it, in my view, you are clearly gutting the bill. I yield back.
Mr. Herron.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I speak in opposition to the amendment from my good friend from Iowa. Particularly since you mentioned that the rodeo industry hasn't even bothered to get back to the committee, that's troubling to me. But at the end of the day, as my friend John Hall mentioned earlier, you know, these are beautiful animals, and certainly I think we should, whether you're taking them for wherever you're taking them, transport them as safely as you possibly can. And I really do believe, with all due respect, that I don't think we need these folks talking, as my friend just mentioned, when they've already made a decision on this. But these are God's creatures, and I think they have certainly, and we have every right, I think, to expect that the people that are transporting them in a safe way and in a way that is humane for them. And if they let them out every 4 hours, I think that's wonderful, but the fact of the matter remains they're still cramped. And I think that we owe it to these beautiful animals to say, look, if folks aren't even going to respond to you, Mr. Chairman, I think that speaks volumes about the problems that we're going to have with this thing. So I would respectfully oppose the amendment and urge my colleagues to do the same thing too.
Mr. Chairman.
I thank the gentleman. Mr. Boswell.
Could we discuss this just briefly?
The gentleman's, I yield to the gentleman.
Well, thank you very much. We've worked together on many, many things, well, no doubt, on many, many more things. And I have a lot of confidence in you, and I think you do in me. So I would consider withdrawing this with the understanding that we would seek out the information you referred to. It might be a little difficult because most of the rodeo companies that I know are independent business people, and I don't know how to collect all this, but it's possible, and I think that's a reasonable thought. So if we can work together on this as we proceed, I would give consideration to withdraw it.
As I have done many times in this committee, and both during my tenure as chairman and during times when we were minority, we reached an agreement to consider a matter further before proceeding to the floor with the bill. I give the gentleman that commitment that we will consider any further information he has or the rodeo industry has without prejudice to the gentleman's amendment.
Well, with that, Mr. Chairman, in all due respect, then I'll withdraw the amendment.
Without objection, the amendment is withdrawn. Are there other amendments to the bill? If not, the question is, the Chair recognizes Mr. Cohen for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I would like to recognize Mr. Kirk and Mr. Whitfield, who are co-sponsors, and I move that the bill, H.R. 305, be approved and reported favorably to the House. I
do want to emphasize again that this is a bipartisan bill. I appreciate Mr. Kirk's initiative and Mr. Cohen on this matter. The question is on the motion. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The bill is approved and ordered, reported favorably to the House. We have two more